The Abercrombie Kids Summer Sale is in full swing, with up to 50% off select styles for the season. Summer plans, vacation, and camp days are all covered, with new dresses, shorts, tees, and swim. Abercrombie Kids has the summer staples they need and the looks that they want to wear. Shop in-store, online, or in the app. Offer applies to select styles as indicated. Discount applied at checkout online.
Electricast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Claudia Monticelli, and I'm host of this podcast called Let's Talk Soul. Today, I have a Renaissance man, self-declared Renaissance man. And why is that? Such a blends high-octane stunt work. Used to be a stunt man. Brian, say hello to our audience, first of all.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate you taking the time and talking to us. There's so much, in Italian, we say there's so much meat on the fire here. Let's see how much we could eat. All right. He has been a stuntman, or when? For how long did that period? When did it stop?
I'm still a stuntman.
Right.
I started when I was 20 and I'm still going. I worked on a show a few weeks ago. Just got called for a show.
Into that? What got you into that?
I was going to college and I'd been through my freshman year and my sophomore year, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't know where to go after that, or what to pursue, or what job.
But you, apart from that, you have a master's degree in sport psychology and a Ph.D. in organizational psychology. So even in those years of not knowing what to do, you did find your way, and you went on in a doctoral
eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen in a line, it didn't happen in a linear kind of a way. And I actually have a talk on that. It's called Always on the Path, because, I work with a lot of teenagers, especially on the athlete side, who are 16, 17. They're trying to figure out, am I going to go to college? If so, which college? Am I going to do this sport in college, like to pursue a scholarship, or am I just going to do it for fun, or am I going to give it up? And all of them have this, not all of them, many of them have this picture of, here's what I need to do. I'm supposed to go to college and do this sport and graduate from college and then get the job or go to grad school or whatever it is. But it's this linear path. And I didn't take that at all. And I'm glad that I didn't. I just wish I'd known ahead of time that I didn't have to, because I was under the same impression many of these kids were. When I got into college, it caused a lot of stress.
But it takes a certain personality, a certain character. I have two sons, and they are polar opposites. One is a daredevil. The other is not. He'll just get the hives when he has to do something that's out of that's any risk involved at all. So let's say that part of your nature is, getting your hands dirty with risk, going into the fire. I mean, or else you would have never thought of doing this type of work. Let me ask you, when was the first job? How did that happen?
Well, that's what I was talking about. So I was in college. I'd been there for a couple years, and then I had a friend of mine who was the company manager of the Batman stunt show at a Six Flags in New Jersey.
Right.
And he got me and a friend of mine some tickets to go out to see the show. And I did. And from the minute that show started, I was hooked. I can't even explain the feeling that I had when this huge explosion went off and motorcycles came jumping out of this place. And I just, for the next 20 minutes, I was mesmerized. And at the end of it, because it was my friend who was the company manager, I was able to go backstage and talk to the performers.
Oh, how nice.
And I asked him, how do you get this job? I couldn't even believe that it was a job. That by itself was astounding to me.
Fun.
That people were being paid to do this kind of stuff that I would pay to do. And they said, all right, well, you need to learn how to do this, that, go to the audition and see if you get the job. Well, I learned those things, went to the audition and got the job. And I did it the summer after my junior year of college. And that was the best. I don't know. I mean, there may have been a better summer somewhere along the way than that, but I don't know what it was. It was fantastic. I was going into work. It was 4 days on, 4 days off. I was making more money than I ever had. I was having more fun than I'd ever had.
Right.
And more importantly, I found what I wanted to do. I wasn't floundering anymore. I wasn't struggling with what am I going to do when college is over? What am I going to do next? What is the job I'm going to pursue? I found it. This is it.
There's got to be a downside. I mean, pain, accidents, you get hurt. Have you got hurt? I mean, have you had a lot of pain for certain accidents, perhaps?
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
No. I mean, obviously there is risk and things can happen. And I certainly have had my share of bruises and sprains and bumps and
nothing,
et cetera and so forth.
Nothing major.
But no big injuries from stunts. I haven't had to deal with any of that. So, and I mean, like I said, when you get hit by a car, it hurts. When you fall downstairs, it hurts. Sure. And there's no way around that. That's just how it is. But you pad up, you do it right, and you come out with, again, you may get a few bumps here and there. Or, I mean, you'll know the next day that you did something. No, but not injured.
Our audience won't have the benefit of video, but I'm looking at this man who has a huge smile, so excited about talking about this. And you don't see that all the time. It's the enthusiasm that's really fantastic that you still have. Now, Brian is the founder of something called Brian Hite Global. And he's also a co-host of a podcast called Poking Holes in Blinders. Why that name?
Because we go through life with certain beliefs, core values, core beliefs that guide and really determine how we perceive our environments. And,
you mean
those
blinders?
Perceptions, blinders like horses.
Like horses,
so blinders,
I
we
see.
have blinders like horses have.
I see.
We can see what's in front of us. We're not blinded, but we're being prevented from seeing other things around us. And so I don't think that we can get rid of those blinders completely because they are so tied to those beliefs and values that we hold. But I think we can poke some holes in them so we can get a glimpse of what these other things are. We can do a little bit more thorough analysis of what it is that's actually happening and think about things a little bit differently than we might tend to in a reactionary, knee-jerk kind of a way.
What about the title of your the business, Brian Hite Global? How did that come to existence?
Well, I worked for the Army as a sport and performance psychology consultant for a little over 10 years. And when I quit that job about 2.5-3 years ago, I started a business called Begin Again Performance Psychology. And the intent was to just do sport psychology work with athletes and with performers, singers, dancers, musicians, actors, etc. And I did that and it was fine, but it wasn't, I realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. The one-on-one work was okay. Even some group coaching stuff is okay, but I really like being on stage. I really like the keynote speaking. I really like doing workshops. I really like doing these podcasts, and there's an idea for a TV show that I have as well that kind of fits what it is that we're doing. So there was just more. There was more that I wanted to do and other media outlets that I wanted to use to communicate the messages that I have. So I changed from Begin Again Performance Psychology to Brian Hite Global, just because it's me and the message that I've gotten from traveling the world and doing the things that I've been doing.
So
really
your
bringing
book,
together the stunt part and the academic, the sports psychology, work with the military. All of it comes together with the messages that I talk about and the different content around high stakes performance that I deal with.
All right. The title of your book, or one of your books, I wasn't able to look through the entire your entire website, but it's called Begin Again. Utilize the wisdom of Eastern and Western ideologies to achieve your full potential. Okay, this is that your first book?
Yeah, that is, and it's a book
and when did
that
it come
I
out?
didn't even set out to write. It came out, I believe, in fall of 2022, if I'm not mistaken. Might have been 2023.
Recent.
But yeah, it's fairly recent, and it emerged from my own work of just a really hard time in my life. It was a divorce that I'd gone through. I was trying to recover from that, and among other strategies that I used, one of them was to read every morning a little bit from books that I refer to them as wisdom books. The Bible, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius,
classics.
I mean, just, or even recent stuff, I mean, there are Sam Harris is a good writer.
Are you an audio book listener? Or do you prefer sitting?
I didn't used to be. I used to be a sit down and look at the books and read it. And I still enjoy doing that. But I've found myself getting out of that habit. I need to break the habit of getting out of that habit and get back into the habit of sitting down and reading the physical books and highlighting them, because I really like that. But I have grown to enjoy the audiobooks. I just don't retain the information as well when I'm listening to the audiobooks.
It's a personal choice. I retain much more of the audio because I'm an audio person. I'm an oral audio person, and my eyesight is so bad, so it's tiring for me to sit with the book. Even with a Kindle, I get tired. So now this is a recent book. So this is your only book so far? Is that right?
Yeah, this is the only book that I've written all of. There's another book called The Change that I contributed a chapter to. It was a chapter on resilience.
Oh, I see. Volume, chapter.
So I talked about resilience through a story from a stuntman story. Actually, I was telling the stuntman story and talked about resilience through that.
Right,
but
tell me,
those are the two books for right now.
What is actually resilience? We know what it means. We get the definition, but put into practice, what is resilience to you?
Well, the thing is, I don't know that everybody does have the definition of resilience. In fact, the researchers writing the literature don't even have the definition, because depending on who you're reading, resilience can be one of three things, and maybe some others that I don't even know. But one of them is, when people talk about resilience, sometimes what they mean is when we live life and some challenge occurs, some bad thing happens, resilience is when we don't get knocked down too far. We might get knocked down a little bit, but we don't get knocked down really far.
I see.
That's resilience.
Another
way that people have conceptualized resilience is when something bad happens and we get knocked down, regardless of how far we go, we get back up quickly and we recover very fast from that. And then the third way, and this is really, it's kind of a combination of the two, but it's more. And I think that the more part is really important. And I emphasize it heavily, and I lean very strongly on it when I work with anybody. And that is, resilience is, yes, if you're resilient, you probably won't get knocked down quite as far, if you have those resources. And you'll probably recover more quickly. But more importantly, when we're really resilient, we will get better from having gone through that particular challenge in the first place. We will improve, we will grow, we will thrive, and we will flourish as a result of experiencing the adversity that we did. We learn from it, we gain wisdom from it, and we can apply all of that moving forward in our lives. So that to me is resilience. So it's not just about how far do you get knocked down or can you recover back to the point that you started at. It's, can you go beyond that point that you started at to improve and actually be better as a result of what you've been through? So to me, that's how I conceptualize resilience.
That we're into the realm of performance psychology.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
And what it means to actually perform, not just to raise the amount of money you make, but physically perform. In this case, in your case, they're tied together, obviously. You can't really separate how successful you are in business from your performance, physical performance. There's a topic that you mentioned to me, and I would like to, well, there's so many. You mentioned stunts, psychology, and the soul. Okay, what high-risk situations teach about the human spirit. Now, maybe you can tell us about that. Talk to us about that. How high is a risk? How high is high? That's what.
Yeah, that's interesting because my niche is high stakes performance, high risk performance, when the consequences really matter. Those are the people I work with. I work with first responders, athletes, performers, and even in the corporate world. And to answer your question, it's whatever we think it is. I mean, honestly, what matters to me may not matter to you, and what matters to you may not matter to me. So we can't look at the situations from an objective standpoint and say this has high stakes, because it just may not for some people, and have very high stakes for others. For example, if someone were to say, Brian, if you do a backflip right now, I'll give you $100,000. Well, for me, $100,000 would be a lot of money, and I would love to do the backflip. Well, I don't know, if Bill Gates was standing there or something and said, we'll give you $100,000 to do this thing. Like, that's a rounding error in what it is that I have. So I'm not really that concerned about it. I'm just going to go about my business. So it's not high stakes. So there's the perception is what really matters when we're in situations. And this is an important point, because when I talk to people, particularly about performance, like you mentioned, where people automatically go is to the sports field or the court or to the stage or in front of the camera. This is what we think about in terms of performance, but performance really is anything that we're doing that we want to do well, that we care about doing our best at. For example, when somebody's having a challenging conversation with a spouse, that's a performance, and it's a high stakes performance, because we really, if it goes well, things are good. If it doesn't go well, the relationship may suffer a lot.
We only know after how high a risk it was.
Well, some people get very, very anxious about going into conversations like that, or a meeting with a boss. Maybe it's a performance review, or maybe you just want to ask for a raise, or there's something that you want to bring up. Maybe it's about a coworker, whatever it is. But there's a lot of anxiety that people experience around those situations and stress that occurs. Why? Because they care. They care about doing well. So it's performance. And they're on it, and they focus a lot on those consequences too.
There was an expression during, I think it was World War II. Pilots used it, pushing the envelope. The envelope was what they saw on the screen in terms of their flight pattern. And so the pushing the envelope means risking and going beyond the norm, beyond what is comfortable. And like you said, it could be anything. But usually, let's say, people who work in higher risks than normal athletes. You mentioned the military, and I have also worked with the military many, many years, and then I left after many years. It was rewarding. It did have its limits because of the mentality that I found. It was there was a hierarchy in the military that was high. It was very, very set, far greater than any other institution that I had worked with. Let's say that a person is just getting off the ground. They're very successful in sports. They're very successful. But of course, to be more successful, there's this interpersonal context, one-to-many talks, one-to-one, one with the boss, one with the wife. But there's always some form of communication involved, usually. And let's say you did mention that you worked with groups. You prefer working with small groups, classes, things like that. Do you ever work one-on-one?
Yeah, I do. I'm just choosier now about who I do that with. And my time is spent in other ways, so I'm just very picky about who I say yes to with the one-on-one
so let's
work.
say I come in, somebody referred me to you. I come to you and I tell you my deal. I do this, and this. I have to do that, and that. And I'm offered this job, but I have to be more, whatever. How do you initiate communication with me? Do you have sort of, I don't know, a form, an initial conversation, some way of figuring out what would work with me, what would not work with me? How do you move in that case?
Yeah, well, I have on the website, which is brianhiteglobal.com, you can schedule a discovery call. So people who are interested in learning more about the programs or about me speaking or about individual coaching, like you were just saying, you can just schedule a discovery call and then I'll ask you, what's going on? And then you tell me your story and I'll connect it to something and give you some ideas about how we might move forward. And I always leave people too with something that they can do, whether we work together or not, it doesn't matter. When we finish talking, they'll have something that they can walk away with and try and hopefully see some results from. A lot of the stuff that we talk about and that we teach and that we try to implement in different organizational settings takes time. It's behavioral change. It's actually rewiring the brain, and that just takes a little bit. So there are some things that we can do. We can make the changes fairly easily without inertia erasing them, and we can see some immediate results. There are a few things like that. But most of the skills and techniques and different resources that I try to teach and provide, it takes some time to integrate them into our way of thinking, our way of perceiving, and our way of acting. It just takes a little bit.
I know it's difficult and it's always, it changes from one person to the next, but what would be an average of the amount of time you work with somebody, or how long does it take for them to implement change? Do you have an idea of that?
Yeah, well, like you said, it does depend. So let's say somebody is one of the programs that I've developed and that I teach and work with a lot is on pressure. I see pressure very differently than many people do. I hear all the time, we have to learn how to perform under pressure, or it's a high pressure situation, and I don't think there is such a thing as a high pressure situation. I don't think there's such a thing as a high stress situation, because stress and pressure are the result of where our attention is and how we are perceiving that situation. So if my perception is that whatever I'm going through is a threat of some kind, that something bad might happen to me, well, then I'm going to experience stress. And if my attention is on the consequences, the potential outcomes of what's going to happen, well, then I can experience pressure. But I can also, in these performance moments, pay attention to the present moment, to be completely engaged in what is right now. And if that's where I am, and truly anybody who's ever been in any kind of a performance state where they've felt, it goes by a lot of names, the zone or flow, but anybody who's been in that state knows there's no stress there. There's no pressure there. There is just a hyper focus and an ideal energy activation level that allows us to attend fully, to engage completely, and to perform our best. So I don't think that it's the right thing to say we need to perform under pressure. No, we need to figure out how to eliminate pressure. Yeah. We don't need to perform under stress either. We need to eliminate that stress. How do we do that? Change our attention, change the way we perceive the situations, and develop those resources that help us in those moments. And the resources that I'm talking about that I focus on are physical, mental, emotional, and social. Those are the four, and sometimes spiritual. Sometimes spiritual, depending on the kind of person and what they're at. And by spiritual, I don't mean religious. No. By spiritual, I mean connected to something larger, almost like the Buddhist concept of oneness or emptiness. It's this broader, I am part of something that's bigger than I am. And if we can connect to that, I think a lot of goodness comes. So that's another resource. So physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual. And developing all five of those within the context of whatever environment we happen to be operating, meaning, are we sleeping well? Are we eating well? Are we getting exercise? Are we stretching? Mentally, where is our focus? How are we talking to ourselves? How are we choosing to perceive situations? Emotionally, how well are we able to regulate and manage emotions, and maybe even generate and create helpful emotions in certain situations in order to propel us forward in these performance moments? And socially, who are our friends? How often do we see them? What types of relationships do we have? What's our communication like? And then the spiritual piece, taking that time to really just get out of our own little space and recognize the connection to the larger piece. So that's where I go in the work. How long it takes really depends on the person and the various places where they're experiencing challenges. Sometimes it's a very acute one moment thing, whereas it's like, for an example, maybe if somebody was going to give a presentation, it's that 2 minutes right before is they're just in panic. Or it might be right afterward. Maybe they may be fine during the performance, but afterward they start to beat themselves up. Oh, I wonder what they think. I wonder if they like me. I wonder if it was good. And they start to ruminate on all the potential. So it just depends on the person. But those five resources, to me, make up human beings. And if we ignore any of them, it's a mistake. And the other thing is they all interact in inseparable ways. Yeah. When I change the way I think, that changes my emotional state. When I change the way that I take care of myself physically, that changes how I think. And all of that affects how I interact with other people and my willingness to do that in the ways that I choose to do that. So social. So everything affects everything else. And I think that taking that holistic approach is the way to go. I think that that's the most helpful way to approach any type of well-being, improvement, growth, whatever you want to call it.
So you've had, let's say, in this brief time that we've been talking, several keywords have emerged. Stress, anxiety, pressure, and they're correlated with fear. When the person is triggered by fear. You mentioned in writing to me spiritual lessons that can be learned from risk and danger.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
And you've touched on that a bit in many different ways through what you were saying up till now. But are there specific non-religious spiritual lessons that can be learned from risk and danger?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that I truly love about stunts, and I mentioned it earlier, and it's this idea of being completely present. And when I find myself in a situation where the challenge level is right where it needs to be, it's in educational terms, there's a researcher called Vygotsky who came up with the zone of proximal development. It's like the Goldilocks zone of we don't want it too hard, we don't want it too easy, we want it right in the middle, where it's challenging, but challenging enough where we can do it and still stay engaged. It requires our full attention to do it well. That's where stunts puts me. That's the place where I find myself just immersed in the moment. And anybody who's ever been in that state, you want to get back. And you can get there through some of these, for me, these high, not the high risk, I guess you could say, but really just the high stakes situations where I love giving talks in front of a bunch of people. If it's a last minute thing, that's kind of even cooler because again, it creates the higher stakes for me. But that's a moment that allows me to be just completely present.
Give me
and
an
for
example
me to get to your spiritual
of a person you have worked with, let's say, who just so I can be clear of what a spiritual lesson is, who's had to face high risk for them and danger for them. What was their takeaway in terms of a spiritual lesson? Yeah.
Well, I don't know that I've ever asked that question directly, so I may be putting words into clients' mouths. But I'll tell you that there was one kid, he's 16 or 17 when we were working together. Performance anxiety was his thing. He was a swimmer. And when he would get to the pool for the competitions, he was just paralyzed by this anxiety. And a lot of the anxiety came from his comparisons or perceptions of others' beliefs about him. He was making up in his own mind what other people were thinking about him. Now, he may have been right. I don't know. And he doesn't either. And that's the point. We can't get in other people's heads. We don't know. But he was very much connected to the I, to the me, and the comparisons in his mind of how that me, that I, that self compared to others around him and how that self was being perceived by others around him. And so I really spent a lot of time with him of trying to break out of that, of just recognizing that he is part of many, that he is, and these other people are too, that we're all operating in this world together. We're all operating synergistically in whatever environments that we're flowing through. And that recognition that he wasn't, my drama teacher in high school used to call it a pre-Copernican ego. Because Copernicus was the first one to talk about, the earth going around the sun rather than the other way around. Well, this kid had a pre-Copernican ego. Everything in the universe revolved around him. But as soon as we put it into a better context, a post-Copernican ego, I guess, of recognizing that, no, he's part of a larger system and he's moving as everything else is moving. And that just, it took some of the load off of his shoulders. And it was visible. Really, I mean, it was a really tangible release of stress and anxiety that he felt. And there were still some techniques we had to work through, and he still had his bad moments that were just hard for him to get through. But in general, when he was able to step back and take that larger perspective, that spiritual perspective, it really lowered his stress, and he was able to engage more fully in the moment.
So it was more possible for him to engage, like you say, to come literally out of himself and interact with.
Yeah, it's a paradox in a way, because he was his performance was being prevented because he was so focused on himself,
right,
and how he was being viewed in the eyes of others. But when he stepped out of himself and recognized himself as part of this larger system, he was actually able to engage more fully in the moment as his self. That allowed him to perform. So that's the paradox part. So by stepping out of ourselves and recognizing the connection with the larger picture, we're able to more fully be ourselves in these moments and experience what it is that we're going through.
Well, let me go over a few things so I could remind our audience. He has available on his website, which is brianhiteglobal.com. And the title of the book is Begin again, utilize the wisdom of Eastern and Western ideologies to achieve your full potential. Now, if there's an expression in Italian, Brian, that says translate something like a dream in a closet. Do you have a dream in something hidden away that's going to take shape in the near future? Do you have an idea of a new book? Do you have an idea of a new part of your business?
There are so many. I've recently done that rebrand, from Begin Again to Brian Hite Global. And so, yes, there will be a podcast that's going to be starting. There's a TV show I think I mentioned earlier where I really, what I'd like to do is find people in high stakes environments that have those jobs or engage in that kind of stuff regularly and interview them and just say, okay, well, what are the challenges that you face and how do you handle those, and connect that to the science and then broaden it out to the rest of the audience so they can learn and grow and take some goodness away. So that's another one.
So we'll be
there's
seeing
a book
you.
Called
I'm going to say,
I certainly hope so.
know that guy. I met that guy.
Certainly hope so. But yeah, there's another book in the works called Flow Under Fire. That'll be
all right.
on
Wait a minute. I'm going to write that down. Flow Under Fire. That's a draft title.
Yep.
Oh,
that's
good. Do you have another draft title? Could it be something different? Flow Under Fire.
Flow Under Fire. I'm not sure what the subtitle is going to be yet.
All right.
But that'll be that.
There's time for that.
Yeah, and you know what? I got a drum set for Christmas.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic.
I've never been able to play the drums, but I play them in my car all the time. I beat my steering wheel and the gear shifters. So, we'll see how it translates to the drums. I did that last year
with a keyboard, an electronic keyboard. It was such a joy for me because it was something I could put the earphones in, not wake anybody up, and just play the piano. Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time, Brian, and giving us just a slice of your life and sharing your enthusiasm with our audience. When you get that Flow Under Fire, what is it? Is it Flow Under Fire?
Flow Under Fire.
All right. So when that comes up, come back. It would be wonderful to have you. Thanks again.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I had a great time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow Let's Talk Soul Podcast on Instagram. Let's Talk Soul Podcast is a production of Electrocast Media. Our executive producers are Mark Netter and Peter Rafelson. If you like our show and like what you hear, please subscribe and give us a rating wherever you enjoy podcasts. And remember, stay curious, stay inspired, and never stop exploring the depths of your soul.
Hi, I'm Mark. And I'm Peter. We're the founders of Electrocast Media, bringing you great podcasts like Nightmare Road Stories, Tech Talk Revolution, and Bodacious Minds.
Electrocast networks include Ruby for female empowerment, the Best Business Network, and GPN for geopolitics. We built this company to create community and amplify diverse voices, and we really appreciate your support.
So, keep listening to Electrocast podcasts and hear the culture.
Electrocast.